All right, everybody, we have another special guest. Many of you know him or heard of him. I've seen him on LinkedIn, Colin Spector. He's the vice president of sales at Aurum. So I reached out to Colin specifically because I knew that he built a sales team and his entire pipeline of leads purely from cold prospecting, no inbounds. Maybe now I think they've changed it, but purely prospecting, which I found phenomenal because Aurum is a very well-known company and it's growing and it's I don't know their financials, but I'm sure they're profitable. And I've heard them around the block in the SaaS space, and it's all cold prospecting. So he's going to teach us tactically some stuff that you can do that has worked for him to generate leads. So Colin, you have the mic. I'll watch the clock. I'll stay true to the time, 20 minutes. If we bleed over, that's cool. If we cut it at 20 minutes, that's cool too. But yeah, you have the mic.
Awesome. More. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Excited to help bring some tactics and tips that helped Aurum, especially in the early days. And it's a similar strategy I use at Namely, where I was prior, where we started at really at 200K in revenue and took that company to 70 million in revenue. And similar story to here at Aurum, where I came in and the founders have done a great job getting the first 6 figures in revenue. And we've since taken that to an 8-figure revenue business, which is really exciting. So happy to share some of the tactics and tips we use. Both companies, we started out with 100% outbound motion and what I call an evangelist sale. And so you're really having to evangelize yourself, cut through the noise, and teach people about who you are. Because without marketing your cover, nobody knows you from anything, right? You're an unknown. And so you're getting your messaging down, getting your frameworks down, and getting creative in the channels that you approach are really the key ingredients to success. And so happy to share some tactical tips that I've used and even still use today in our sales team to help be efficient and effective as a smaller outbound focused organization. So the first tip I have is bucketing your follow-ups. So there's a lot of information. And what does that mean? There's a lot of information out there on cold calling, how to persuade from the intro to the middle of the call to close for the meeting. The reality that I want to share with the audience is it's rare to book a meeting on the first connect. You connect with someone, they give you an objection. If you're really good at your sales objection frameworks, you can handle that objection. But more often than not, you get the send me an email, call me another time, I'm busy, or yeah, I'll check it out later, just send me an email. Bucketing all of your follow-ups and getting specific on the type of follow-up. I'm busy, call later. Oh, we're already engaged with a current vendor. I'm not interested. I'm not the right person. Understanding what the disposition is on that call and then bucketing those into follow-ups, it gives you another list where you're going to have a higher connect rate because the person was the right person. And 2, you have another reason to reach back out with a more compelling message, depending on the type of follow-up. So the first tactical tip I have is create dispositions and align them under follow-up. So the different types of follow-ups, whether it's an objection follow-up, whether it's like an interested follow-up, like, hey, send me some information, I'm just busy right now, or a current vendor follow-up, I'm not the right person follow-up. And then you have a specific message to be able to hook them in for a meeting or a longer conversation the next time.
So 2 follow-up questions. The first one is, from what I understand, so if you're talking to a prospect, if you're prospecting them and whatever objection response they give you, let's just say it's one that's a not interested one.
Sure.
You're saying that you should create a funnel, whether it's like an email, like an app, some sort of follow-up funnel,
yes,
based on a certain objection. So if they say you'll have a funnel called not at this time funnel, you'll have one that says next quarter funnel, and so you have an entire follow-up funnel based on that objection. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly correct. So an email template for the specific type of objection, and as well, just tagging those calls, and that could be your follow-up call blitz list. So whether you're using sequences or you're just doing calling lists, categorizing those lists, once you've collected because every time you call someone for the first time, you're collecting some information. Was it the right number?
Yep.
The who's who in the zoo. Who is this person? Are they related to the problem we're solving? An influencer, authority? Do they already have a vendor? Do they understand our message? And then bucketing them even more specifically into certain follow-up buckets. That's right.
So if you were, let's just say somebody has a fault, they did this, like, okay, wow, this is good. I'm going to put it in a, we're already using another vendor follow-up, right? A
Sure.
bucket. When
Yeah.
they are planning on following up with that list of leads that have said we're using another vendor and they would call them, what would they say?
Yeah. So number one, once you understand that they've already made an investment in this space, you can follow up with that specific person, but more importantly, you can also follow up that specific account and get more strategic with more contacts in that account. And you can reach out to other people in the power line within that account, and share your messaging that you wrap around your differentiators with that specific competitor. So let's say I'll just use the example from when I was back at Namely. We called into an account and they said, "Hey, we're in the middle of an agreement with ADP." Okay, you're in an agreement with ADP. Great. What do you know when your renewal is? When do you guys typically look at new vendors? They may or may not know the information. They may or may not share that information, but you want to make sure you're reaching out in a relevant time. So whatever information you collect, you should put at the account level in your CRM for the entire account. And then you need to look at all the contacts you have under that account, their personas. What level on the power line do they sit? Do they have authority? Are there going to be somebody that just has influence? Are there going to be someone, an end user? And then if ideally, if you can understand their renewal date, then you could start to build a strategic follow-up sequence, because the money's in the follow-up. This is what we teach our team. We call it the FU money, that follow-up money. Once you've collected that first connect information, you have a follow-up strategy for that account. I know this is an ADP account. I know the renewal is around their open enrollment date. I know they start to look at vendors 2 quarters ahead of that renewal date because implementation takes 30 days. And you can start to influence the decision criteria that those contacts are going to have leading up to that renewal. And
Are you getting this information from the prospect? Like, let's say you're looking at the power line, like who else in that account you can go after and what their role is in influence. How do you know that information? Is it purely from just like your own research and what you're understanding, or are you taking, a swing at asking the prospect themselves, like, hey, should I reach out to this person? Who else should I reach out to? What's their position?
Yeah. So I mean, look, ideal state, yeah, you get someone cold and you've got their interest and say, hey, like how involved are you with the management of X system? Let's just use an HR system. How involved are you with the management of the payroll process over there at More Incorporated? Well, I process the commissions and the benefits. Okay, like who else helps you with that? Like who helps you manage the onboarding of those people? Oh, that would be Tiffany over in the HRIS department. Okay, and were you there when you guys brought on ADP? Were you part of that process? So it's not every day the person's going to let you go through those steps,
Yeah.
but another person in the company might. Some people tell you to F off, but through cold outreach, you can cut through the noise. You can have a live conversation. Some of that you can infer from LinkedIn and look at their job description and look at the skills in their LinkedIn profile they were tagged for. Were they tagged for the specific set, like the commission processing, were they tagged for payroll? So just using that kind of HR example there.
And are you, as far as prospecting goes, when you were at Namely or when you started with Orem and all that, are you leaning in more to the cold calling? I know it's probably a mixture, some sort of like omni-channel approach, cold calling, emailing, social.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because when I get a cold call, if I give you my number right now on Zoom and you have it, and we're talking right now, and you call me, it's either going to do one of two things: scam likely, or it's going to call me, but it's going to be silent. I won't actually realize that you're calling me unless I look at my phone.
Mm-hmm.
And it will just say like a number and area code that you called from, and I probably won't answer it. And that's happening like right now. Like today, I just got a cold call recently, a bunch of missed calls, all cold calls, and it was all silent. And I'm probably not going to call them back, especially if they didn't leave a voicemail or a text. So I find that cold calling could be a little bit more tricky nowadays than it used to be.
Yeah. So I mean, like any channel, you're going to have buyers that respond differently to different channels. And so I've always taken an omni-channel approach. I love the phone. I've generated millions in ARR for businesses over the phone, and the sales reps that I've trained all use the phone, but we're not just phone. It's about the holistic account-based approach to prospecting. So when we make a call, I mean, you brought up one of the other tactics I want to bring up is voicemails. So these days, like you mentioned, you might ignore that call, but if they left a voicemail, you might actually look at the transcription, right? The voicemail is going to show up and you'll see a transcription. And so we train everyone to leave a voicemail at specific steps in their sales campaign that tie back to other channels that they're reaching out on, whether they're sending them a direct mail, whether they're sending them an email, or some other channel that we're reaching out to them on. LinkedIn. Hey, I'm going to send you a LinkedIn connection. Keep an eye for me. Call in.
Would that be the voicemail? An example of a voicemail?
I think, yeah, let's get tactical. An example voicemail is, hey, Moore, calling from Orum, O-R-U-M as in mother.com, following up on how we can help with sales efficiency. I just sent you a case study of how we helped one of your partner organizations. Keep an eye for that coming to you in your inbox now.
Got it. So no call to action to actually call you back. It's more so, hey, I want you to go check out whatever message I sent to you on LinkedIn or email, whatever it is.
What, like, we might have a call to action in 1 or 2 steps, but if let's just say, I don't know, if it's a 10-step sequence or cadence or sales campaign, or even longer than that in some cases, you might have 1 or 2 call to actions, but typically where we've seen voicemail responses are from email replies. They'll say, hey, I got your voicemail, or a LinkedIn response, right? If you just think about the basic of kind of marketing and psychology, it's impressions on people. They see it in different channels. Whether your marketing team bought the billboard, you sent the voicemail, you're on their LinkedIn, you did a LinkedIn view, you sent a DM, you sent them an old handwritten letter or via postal or Sendoso. They're going to respond to different channels when they're primed, and the relevance is there to respond. So the shorter answer is the voicemail drives reply rates from email, LinkedIn, or callbacks. We do get callbacks all the time at Orum or in prior lives as well.
Do you think because you mentioned like what you were saying about like impressions and seeing your name and your face and being familiar with it, at least this year when I started my business, I'm doing cold prospecting myself, not cold calling so much because of my opinion of like it's harder to reach somebody over the phone because they don't know you, or unless you leave a voicemail, fine, whatever. But my idea of cold prospecting, if you're lucky, you get them to say, yeah, I'll jump on a call, or I'm open to learning more, or whatever it is. But otherwise, the next best thing that you should be thinking about, your mindset for prospecting, cold prospecting, is just get your name familiar. So they'll see your name when you're emailing them, but they'll also see your name on LinkedIn or LinkedIn DM or a post or an engagement. Do you find that cold prospecting has changed to be less of a let me get you on the call to a let me just sort of be familiar?
Well, I think it's a combo. I firmly believe nothing cuts through the noise like a live conversation.
Yeah.
We get on a call, you've ignored all my calls. I've sent LinkedIn email messages. Yeah, you might be primed and familiar with me. You might have seen my name. You might have clicked delete on my email. You at least saw my name when you swiped, to delete. And when we finally connect, whether you actively acknowledge it or just in the back of your mind, your subconscious, you'll have been familiar with my domain and my name. And so more calling with Orum, great to connect. They keeping you busy today. And you're going to respond to that like, yeah, I'm busy. I thought this was my daycare calling, or I thought I'm about to start a Zoom meeting. I thought it was the interviewer, whatever it is. And then you're just into the frameworks now. You're into an objection framework, which we train our people on, our customers on at Orum. And so you handle the objection. So you connect. And sometimes they may not have seen your information. Ideally, they're primed and warmed up and they've seen your name and domain. That's not always going to be the case. If it's pure cold outreach from a cold call, the framework still holds true if you can get the connect.
At what point do you think the cold call should take place? Should it be if someone's like launching their outbound campaign right now, it's obviously omni-channel, cold calling, emailing, LinkedIn, etc. And I have an idea of what I'm experimenting now, but do you think the first few touches should be email, LinkedIn, and then maybe like the fifth, sixth, seventh later touches, tail end of the follow-up should be cold calling? Or do you think cold calling should be the first one or in the middle, like beginning, middle, or end?
Sure. I mean, with the right technologies, you can do it at any stage. Going back with the thesis that if they've seen your name, they've seen your domain, they notice you checked out their LinkedIn, you might have gotten a connection request from them. When you call, they'll be somewhat familiar. So parking that call in the middle or in the later parts of your sequence, absolutely. You can have like a sequence that is like highly researched, customized, but then kind of has a trailing leg of calls, and maybe even just like one-off call tasks that are like outside the sequence once the sequence completes, where you have them on a blitz list. You know,
Yep.
they didn't reply to your email, LinkedIn. You've already done all the research on them, and if you have efficiency through calling, which Orem, that's what we do. We help make calling more efficient by getting people into live conversations. So when we call people like you more who don't typically answer the phone, we help to get that conversation. If there's a chance that you're going to pick up, we'll help to get that conversation. You may never pick up, but it would not make sense to call without a system like Orem to someone like you if your connect rate, your answer rate is extremely low.
Yeah.
And so that's where Orem can come into play, is helping to get those live conversations, especially when you've already done the research. One time up front, maybe you finished your sequence. I think calling anytime is good, though, personally.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. We're 20 minutes in, but I know I cut you off because you shared with me one tactic, and then I cut you off, and then we went off a little bit on a tangent. So if it's okay with you, we can bleed over a little bit because I definitely want to hear the other tactics that you had in place.
Sure. So something that we did, which I thought was genius in the earliest days of Orem, and I've seen businesses come out that do this now, was we used to have our account development reps pre-dial the leads before our account executives would call. Because our account executives were the most versed and trained on the message and the hook and the compelling event and relevancy. And the account development reps, what they would do is they would pre-dial the list of leads, and we would do a survey. We would connect with someone and we would confirm it's the person, and we'd ask what CRM they're on or what engagement tools they're on. And that would be the end of the call. And then for the account executive, we had a validated number. We already knew the tech stack that we were relevant to and had a compelling message around. And sometimes we even got competitive information if they were on a competitor type solution. So to answer one of your earlier questions, how did we capture that account-based information? We would call and run surveys. And then we'd have the account executive who is the most trained on the sales message. And now our sales development team does this. But at the time, we were really full cycle AEs and really one SDR and some account development reps. So
Yeah.
now you see businesses, that's what they do all day, is human validate, phone numbers. But I thought what we did was a survey and do that account-based research.
Yeah. Are they telling the like that first call that's going on to do that collecting data? Are they telling them, let's just say they're calling from Orem? Are they saying, hey, I'm calling from Orem? Because then if they say, hey, I'm calling you from Orem, I'm just doing a survey. Okay, yeah, let me give you some information. Then an AE calls later, hey, I heard that you're doing XYZ. You're using it. It's like a gotcha kind of thing.
They wouldn't say specifically from Orem. They would say they're calling about a survey. Hey, I see you're a revenue executive. I have a revenue survey. It'll take 30 seconds. Would you be willing to ask you a few quick questions? I'm doing some research for a project.
And if they say who are you calling from, they would say Orem, or they would make it up.
They would say it's a research project for the revenue market.
Okay, so they would because if they say Orem and then an AE calls from Orem, it's like a gotcha. Like I knew.
Yeah. And we did something like that in the earliest season. Namely, it was like, we're doing some research in the HR space, and like HR and revenue executives, like, we like to contribute to our space, and so it's like, yeah, sure. Okay. We're a Salesforce customer, and yeah, we do have reps trained for the phones, or at Namely is like, yeah, we're an ADP customer and we do process payroll and benefits on ADP. We're happy overall, satisfaction kind of survey. So, I mean, people call all the time for surveys, right? Like just consumer kind of surveys. So it's not like a novel thing to call about a survey, because you're not selling them anything. All you're doing is asking them some questions. And people, when in any kind of call, when it's a cold call, they're in fight or flight mode.
Yeah, true.
Right. So survey is like, okay, this person's not here to sell me something.
How soon after does the AE call after the person that called for the survey? It can't be the same day.
No. We would do like maybe a trail of a couple weeks of building the list of validated, researched contacts, and then call against that list.
That's funny. I wonder if you ever had a prospect telling the AE, "Did you call me? Somebody called me a few weeks ago. They asked about a survey."
I mean, I can't recall like offhand if it happened, but it's like, okay, like that's great. You have a survey. Yeah, I mean, it also is important to us what CRM you're on. My research, you guys are on Salesforce, and
so I like that tactic. I've heard that before from somebody else. Feels like if someone's listening to this right now, this episode, like, all right, I want to implement that. I guess for me, the takeaway is, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Implement it, human verification, but spread the time from the initial human verification to when the AE reached out, because it's just too fresh, too coincidental for the prospect. What's tactic number 3 if you had one? I don't know if you had one. I'm assuming you had one.
So yeah, I mean, we the other kind of guerrilla thing. Well, posting on LinkedIn, was a big thing for Orem, especially. I didn't do that as much at Namely. I wish I did back then, but at Orem, that has been instrumental for us. And just getting really focused on what you post on at LinkedIn. And I'd say like that's something that a lot of our reps here do very well. And that is really what drove the inbound that we had. And so in the beginning of Orem, it was telling the entrepreneurial journey. We're a technology founded by Stanford engineers, and the first salesperson at Rubrik that went from 0 to 300 million. And Orem was the secret weapon at Rubrik that got them to that milestone. And now we're bringing this technology to the masses, right? We've commercialized it, and people are like, whoa, that sounds really cool. And then just sharing tactics and stories about that journey in the early days as a founder. I mean, people love stories. And when you find your niche audience, for us, it was like sales development, inside sales, account executives, and revenue executives that were building sales teams. And so we got a really good following, in the early days, and any inbound we got was from social selling. Now, one more guerrilla tactic with the time left, in addition to LinkedIn, what we were doing, which I thought it's still, we still get some inbounds from this, is we would do questions and answers on Quora, on Reddit. And so that helped, SEO, and helped drive people to our site. And so just answering questions on kind of like not as well like trafficked places. And so people are like Googling in Quora, like, how do I make my sales team more efficient on the phone? And there's like a guerrilla marketing kind of answer that, hey, check out this brand new AI technology called Orem. It helps your reps get more.
Well, if you do, sometimes I'll Google a question about something, copywriting, whatever it is. And a lot of times Google, the first results are Reddit answers and Quora answers.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So cool. Yeah, it definitely helped in the early days before we had any money to pay any advertising at all. So LinkedIn, Quora, Reddit, those were great channels.
Yeah. Last question for you. If someone were to build out an outbound campaign, whether they're solopreneur, entrepreneur, CEO, whatever you want to call it, how long do you think it should take someone to, one, build their list, buyer persona? I know it depends, but we'll keep it sort of like broad. To writing out their first, writing out their follow-up cadence, like from cadence 1, 2, 3 plus the phone, to actually implementing, like that whole building out part. How long should that take?
I mean, it's a lot of upfront work, right? But once you have the frameworks, you're just plugging in value props. I think there are frameworks out there. If you can get some templatized kind of frameworks that work, then it's just a matter of building lists based on persona, based on your ideal customer profile, or based on the problem that you solve.
Yep.
Is another key one, right? So, and knowing who's relevant to that problem, right? So not just calling the titles, but getting like the core thing with building the list is, especially when you have something like Orem, where you're doing focus call blocks, you're going from one conversation to the next. You want to get into a groove of speaking to that problem. So if I'm calling RevOps versus sales enablement versus the CRO versus an SDR manager, very different. Just variance in the message. So you bucket it based on the persona and the problem.
Yep.
CROs have big business problems versus sales enablement have different problems than an SDR manager focusing on their personal team's quota.
That's a big one. That's a big one. I think people miss that part where they're prospecting to maybe just the CEO and talking about one problem, where prospect to the VP of sales, but talk about a different problem entirely.
Exactly. And bucket the problem, bucket the persona, and you get better at speaking to that problem when it's bucketed like that. So that'd be the other bucket. So it's follow-up buckets and then persona and problem buckets.
That's a big one. How long? So I definitely agree with you that there's a lot of upfront work. So how long would you say it takes to build a list, including the figuring out the problem? I know it depends, but if you had to throw a number on it.
I mean, you could invest like a full day on a Monday building a list, call it of, I don't know, 100 contacts that you've looked at and vetted, and then those are your 100 calls and emails and messages for the rest of the week. So the upfront work to really get it going from scratch takes time, 100%. And I would recommend just split that work with an account development rep, whether you work with someone on like a task kind of website, or you hire someone full time, but getting someone to do more of the manual steps, or, we're talking like early days when you're bootstrapped, you might not have technology, right? Like splitting that work of just pulling the names, the LinkedIn, the numbers, and then identifying what aspects to research and build that list out. Splitting that work would make you more efficient.
Would that be like a 1 week worth of work, upfront work from scratch? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, I would say like 1 week of work to get like a solid start. Like if you do like 100 fully vetted contacts a day, you've got 500 now contacts where you're doing your omni-channel for the following couple of weeks, and then pick 1 day a week where you go back to list building. So you don't want the well to run dry. So like maybe a week worth of list building and count research, try and divide and conquer with someone else. And then pick 1 day a week where you're doing 50 to 100 contacts. All you do is prospecting on that day.
Do you think it would take a week to draft out the entire follow-up, like all the cadences, like from initial outreach to the follow-ups, or just take a few days?
I mean, these days there's so many like email writing technologies, like you can automate most of it. And like I said, get a framework and it could take you maybe a couple hours. And you're plugging in your value prop. You might want to test different value props. Like you can get really experimental with this, but like just to start with one, ideally you start with two and you A/B test what value props are working, what hook is working, what closing lines are working, what problem is relevant to what persona, right? Like it just really, I think it really depends if you don't yet know your product market fit and your relevancy and what stage we're at. If we're starting from scratch, you're going to have to do some experimenting, but track the data. Where did I get held up in the call? What lit them up and gave them energy versus like, where did they like contract and run away? And take note of that, and then start to refine your value prop and your message. So it's a lot of iterating and experimenting. But the more you can document, get some tools to help track, or at minimum do it on Excel, the better you're going to be off. So
cool. All right, we're definitely out of time. Appreciate this. It was just helpful for anyone listening. You have an opportunity to plug yourself. So if you want to tell people where to find you or pitch anything.
Sure. Yeah, more. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Colin Spector, Vice President of Sales for Orem, ORUM as in mother.com. We're a live conversation platform that helps you have more conversations in any day than you would ever have in any week. So we're excited to connect, and feel free to shoot me a connect or a follow. Thanks so much.
Colin.